I think, and it's not a surprise to you because we've communicated by email, but I think you've treated me really unfairly in the last few weeks, and I've come here to clean up this mess, and that the structure of that conversation is an unfortunate one because I'm going to be saying a lot of things that are going to sound defensive, right? I'm taking, the slime of a few people who you've had on your show before me off of me, right? And that's an unfortunate just context for any conversation because one, I'm going to have to say some critical things about these people. These are people I don't actually want to talk about, like Reza Aslan. And
I think this is really the problem with Sam Harris and his sort of zealous disciples, is that, and why the only term for what they believe in is fundamentalism. When you combine an absolute sense of certainty with the kind of literalism that I have already described, with a utter sense of siege, right? Sam Harris thinks that he is completely under siege by everyone, that everyone is out to get him. And, of course, this notion that those who disagree with you aren't just wrong, but evil, sinister. They've got some hidden agenda. It's not just a disagreement, that there is something else going on there. That's called fundamentalism. And it doesn't matter whether it's religious fundamentalism or atheist fundamentalism. And it needs to be rejected by all people. The problem with not just Sam, but with the new atheists in general, is that they give atheism a bad name. My greatest intellectual heroes are all atheists, whether I'm talking about Schopenhauer or Freud or Marx or Feuerbach. These were the people who gave birth to the modern world. They were the people who gave birth to the Enlightenment. But they were experts in religion. They understood religion and then criticized it from a place of expertise. And there is lots to criticize about religion, as you have rightly said. But what is happening now is that sort of a guy sitting in his room watching television with a blog has now become a self-described expert on religion. And
Sam Harris, he has a BA in philosophy from Stanford.
And espouses the most basic, uninformed, and unsophisticated views about religion from a position of intellectualism. And I think that that's dangerous because I understand your animosity towards religion, but even you understand that religion is not going anywhere. On the contrary, religion is a growing force in the world. It's a growing force in the United States. The most recent Pew poll showed that a majority of Americans want more religion in public life, not less. So this idea that religion is just bad science, it's failed science, it's just silly superstition, it's silly belief in gods, despite the fact that about a third of the major religions in the world don't actually believe in God. That is not just a misunderstanding and mischaracterization of religion, but it's dangerous because what it does is it keeps us from having some very important and necessary conversations about the role of religion in society, about the problem of extremism in religious communities, and about how to reconcile the realities of the modern world with these contextual scriptures that so many people nowadays view incorrectly as literal and inerrant.
Well, almost none of that actually maps on to what I do or how I speak and what interests me. I mean, I'm not someone who talks about atheists being under attack, and this is not, famously among atheists, I said we shouldn't even use the word atheism. If you Google the problem with atheism, you'll get a speech of mine where I say that just as we don't have to define ourselves as non-astrologers, we don't have to define ourselves as atheists. Now, the word is around, and in some cases it's politically useful. I would just point out against Reza's insouciance on that point that atheists are the most stigmatized minority in this country, in the sense that it's the only variable around which you have more or less doomed any political career. If you ask people, will you vote for an African American, a homosexual, a Jew, any variable you can think of, a Muslim, in your own party who's well qualified, you will get a majority voting for that person, no matter how you tweak those dials, except if you say atheist. Then a well qualified atheist in your own political party will not get your vote more than half the time in this country. So it's a political problem to speak too honestly about the implausibility of religious doctrines, and until we have a change in public opinion on this question, until the taboo around criticizing bad religious ideas gets lifted, we're not going to have politicians talking sense publicly on these topics, and our political process will continue to be hostage to people's religious convictions, which are not helpful. But the other thing I would say to what Reza said is that it's not that I'm reading the Bible literally. It's that, one, I'm noticing that a significant percentage of Christians do. This is, 45% of Christians in any poll you're going to run are literalists. They believe that the Bible is the perfect word of the Creator of the universe, and it has to be read literally, not metaphorically. And so let's just talk about those 45% and the consequences of believing these things. That's one conversation. Then you can talk about all the people who think it's still inspired by God, but realize that some passages have to be understood metaphorically. Okay, great. Talk about that and those consequences. Then there are all the people who seem to have faith claims that are so elastic as to commit them to absolutely nothing, but they still want to believe something, and they still find it important to proclaim the religion of their parents. Okay, let's talk about the consequences of those beliefs. And one consequence of those beliefs, and it's a style of magician's patter that Reza's more or less made a career out of, is to give cover to all the other truly divisive and dangerous and unseemly certainties of fundamentalists. Because what Reza wants to do is to say it's never the problem is never really religion. It's always politics. It's always economics. It's always somebody was oppressed by somebody, and that explains their behavior. No one's ever really motivated by a strong commitment to theology. No one's blowing himself up on a bus because he wants to get to paradise and get his virgins. It turns out that's untrue. There are people, in fact, the people who blow themselves on buses, almost to a man, are focused on paradise. They're not focused on some terrestrial grievance that makes sense once you strip away the divisive religious nonsense.
There's a deeper point about a problem with journalism that I think should be exposed here. Because it's not, because I think you and I have a different view about just how this game should be played. And I'll give you an analogy. So the website Salon has maybe half a dozen or a dozen articles on me that are just pure slander. I mean, they misrepresent my views. One of these articles, one of the writers calls me a douchebag. I mean, this is not journalism. These are just hit pieces that are on the website Salon. Now, any naive reader of that website, they visit this website. It's one of the most trafficked websites on earth. They think, well, this is all journalistically sourced. There's an editorial policy that has made all of this kosher. But the truth is, much of what you read on Salon is just maniacs in their bedrooms typing. I mean, this is not the New York Times. Now,
Salon would ask me to have you take this video off because you said that about them.
No, well, let me tell.
You see what I'm saying?
No, well, no, it's not a valid analogy, but we'll get there. So,
okay.
So when I communicate, this stuff is built up over time, and so I communicate with the editor-in-chief of Salon, complaining about this. One article says I supported the Iraq War. I never supported the Iraq War. So. So factual inaccuracies and tonal things that are just crazy for journalists to be doing. And the editor-in-chief of Salon says, well, I'm so sorry you feel that way, but at Salon, we're open to all voices. This is all about conversation. This is a salon, after all. So perhaps you would like to write an article for us, defending yourself, showing how you're not a racist and a bigot and an Islamophobe and a Zionist and everything else we've called you. Yeah. So, and I said, okay, so great. So first you steal part of my reputation by just putting all of the stuff out there. Now you want to steal some of my time by getting me to work for you for free, right? And then you want me to drive all my traffic to your site, all my readers, so they can read where I have said, I'm not a racist and I'm not a genocidal maniac. Now, Does this sound familiar? Because this is the situation I feel like I'm in with you.